Hello and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm David from Westcon, and I'll be the MC for today's webinar. Joining us today are our leading security vendors from Beyond Trust, Checkpoint, Forescout, Gigamon, and Tufin. We will be discussing topics related to Zero Trust today so that you will know what are the best practices and how to implement a Zero Trust model in your organization. But before we get started, let me just go through some housekeeping rules. First of all, your microphone is on mute throughout the webinar. If you have any questions during the panel discussion, please type them into the chat box. Should be at your right. Okay, we'll bring them up later for you. As all of you may know now, the first 50 who sign up and attend this webinar will receive a mystery gift worth $50 from us as a token of appreciation. Next, we are also having an ultimate trivia quiz toward the end of this webinar where the top 3 winners will back away up to $300 worth of shopping vouchers. That's a lot. All of you will stand a chance to win this, so please stay tuned to the end of the webinar. So without further ado, we'll hand over this to Ricky Ho, the country manager from Westcon, to give the welcome speech. Hi, Ricky, over to you, please.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for taking your time off to join us this webinar. My name is Ricky Ho. I'm the country manager for Westcon. Now, I'm going to take a couple of minutes to give you a high-level overview and introduction of Westcon. Now, without further ado, let's start the presentation. Now, Westcon Comstor is actually the leading global distributor. So, as you can see, the real value, the 6 core value to our partners from the right on my left is a deep vendor relationship. Also, we do quite a fair bit of partner enablement, being sales, and also the technical. We also provide market insight, whereas we actually in the IT distribution industry for 30 over years. So in terms of the technical services, we have our post-sales, pre-sales, preemptive maintenance, and also our NOC center. Right? We also offer global deployment capability, whereby geographical area in terms of deployment, taxation, clearance, and logistic. This is part of the offer from Westcon. So the last one, the digital distribution, whereby partner can seamlessly 24 hours, you can look at the availability of the stock, quotation, inventory, and also tracking of the equipments read about. Right? Next, this is our global reach. As you can see, we have the America, EMEA, and also APAC, whereby we actually have all the present globally. So in terms of the numbers on a high-level overview, we are in business for over 35 years. The revenue as of last year is actually 3.4 billion. We have about 3,100 people, 240 engineers. We have 10 international support centers, as well as 50 plus countries with a physical presence. We also ship to 180 countries so far, and we have 39 international logistics centers and stocking facilities worldwide. Right, the main 4 core technology pillars that we carry: infrastructure, data center, collaboration, and security. Right, but this is actually the high level of introduction of Westcon. This not stop here. I think I can pass it to our colleague here, James. James, over to you. This end of my high level quick introduction of Westcon. James, over to you.
Hi. Thank you, Ricky, for the wonderful introduction. Once again, very good morning to all our audience here. Right. Thank you for attending this event on the Forerunner of Zero Trust Security. My name is James Lim. So I'm going to be the moderator for this panel discussion, right? So today, as we step into this new norm, most of us are now sitting in the comfort of our own homes like this, right, to do this webcast. It is also prompting fresh thinkings and ideas that could very well alter the business that we once know, right? So things like Facebook's live, auction selling, social media advertisements are just some examples of the ideas that have gained tremendous popularity over the months. So organizations today now need to step back, rethink, and re-strategize what are the changes that they need to do in order to cope with this new norm, right? Which is why today we have invited these 5 panelists here to visit the Zero Trust security model, right? And we look into some of their technologies that can help customers overcome and implement a Zero Trust security architecture, right? So without further ado, let's introduce the 5 panelists, right? These 5 wonderful gentlemen representing each of their solution are AJ, right? AJ, Director, Solution Engineering APJ for Beyond Trust. Hi, AJ.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me here today, James.
All right, no problem. Next, we have Edwin from Checkpoint. He's the Regional Director, Southeast Asia and Korea.
Morning, everybody. Thanks for having me.
All right. Next, we have Darren Chen, right? Senior Manager, System Engineering Asia from Forescout.
Hi, everyone. Have a good day.
Hi. Next, we have Vladimir, Director, Solution Engineering APJ from Gigamon. Hi, Vladimir. Lastly, we have Henry, SE Director from Tufin.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Hi, welcome, guys. Okay, so to our wonderful audience today, right, for every questions that you have post in the chat, you'll be entitled for a $5 GrabFood voucher, yeah? So this $5 GrabFood voucher will be capped at $5 per person per pax, all right? So if you have 3 or 5 questions, right, the limit will always be $5, all right? But it's still good, you know, yeah, you can have some food delivered to your house, you know, you can use this voucher. It's not a lot, but it's a form of a way of saying thanks for contributing, okay? So we would like to encourage you to participate and at the same time ask more questions if you have to. And in case if we do not get to address the questions, we will take it back and address it separately to you. Okay. So while the audience are preparing the questions for us on the right-hand corner, right, I'm going to kickstart maybe some of the questions and a panel discussion by mentioning that the Zero Trust security architecture is actually a thought process and approach about how to create your organization cybersecurity posture. Yeah, there is no one framework approach, and every organization is unique in every ways. So with that, let us first kickstart with our first question for the day. Yeah, the first question that I would like to pose to all the panelists here is that what are your views on Zero Trust security, right? And why should we even care about it? And based on the context of this COVID-19 and based on the solution that you are offering, how can you actually help the customers, right, overcome this? Maybe for the start, we can have AJ, yeah? AJ from Beyond Trust. We'd like to start off with this question first.
Yeah, thanks, James. So I think Zero Trust has been all in the news for the last couple of years. In fact, it's right at its the top of the hype cycle. Now, in the last couple of years, the way how business is conducted has drastically changed. We are moving from physical stores to digital storefronts. And what that means is that companies are leveraging technologies such as DevOps, cloud, and containerization that has just made the traditional perimeter irrelevant. And that is where you now need to have an additional layer or a more rigorous way of verifying the users, being able to grant them access into your, into the applications that you're hosting. And that is where Zero Trust comes in. The very fundamental nature of Zero Trust is never trust, always verify. So which means that regardless, you treat each user as if he's an external user, you treat them as if, at the point of access, you validate their, authenticate them, validate them, and then based on the various context, you grant them access. This leads to a highly elevated degree of security. So rather than having standard or by default privileges that most users have when access based on whether they're using a company desktop or whether they are logged onto a company VPN or onto a company network. In this case, you validate on each and every stage. Now, this provides a great layer of security, because one of the biggest way how attackers gain access is stolen credentials. By using this context-based zero trust model, you ensure that even if people have stolen credentials or compromised credentials, you restrict their access at use, and as well limit the amount of access they have across the enterprise resources.
Wow. Yeah. I like the word when you say that most of them are now being affected by the way that stolen credential can now be one of the key things that especially when it's come to zero trust security, where you can actually go into your network and try to do some form of hacking. And I think it's also important that we understand that from your solution point of view is that the PAM, let's say for the Beyond Trust solution, right, there's a lot more that you can do with this stolen credential and the password management and so on. Yeah. So I hope we can discuss more about it in the later on. Okay. So maybe next one we will have Edwin from Checkpoint. Would you like to address on the questions?
Sure. So I actually agree with a lot of what AJ already shared. So instead of repeating that, I'll try to build on it a bit. Obviously, we're from a slightly different perspective, but most people know us as the original network vendor. And I think that what I would suggest now is that the reason this is important, which was part of the question, is that perimeter is now Legion, right? If you're sort of a comic book and superhero nerd like me. And the idea is that you really don't have defined spaces anymore, and it's now a fundamental design challenge. So the two things I wanted to add to this is that really it's less about specific architecture. Obviously, that will result from all of the things that need to happen. Really what it is now is it's a model that's very data centric and identity aware. And the goal is to handle this idea that perimeters are now everywhere. And pretty much, so this comes down to human beings, devices, and access from different locations. And if the last 15 months, has taught us anything, is that we end up working from everywhere, right? And using a variety of devices to get our job done. So I think AJ is probably coming from a similar place that I am, in the sense that when you look at how you define what zero trust is, I 100% agree, where you never trust and always verify. What does that really mean? Well, there's basically 7 principles that I think are important. And if you're looking for third-party advice, this is how Forrester looks at the problem. So specifically, it's this: you have a bunch of networks, and they need specific and granular segmentation. There are people, and this is where context-aware authorization is important. Then you have devices. You need to protect those devices themselves. And you also need the ability to do things like isolate if they're compromised or vulnerable. You have data, and this is a hard one. You have to classify, protect, encrypt it wherever it happens to be. That's a big problem. Then more and more these days, workloads, right? So this is, you need real-time visibility, and you need adaptive policy, because these workloads are always moving. So when you hear things like cloud and digital transformation, it largely comes back to a series of workloads. You need visibility and analytics. So this is, you have to detect, you have to mitigate, and you need a single view. Probably the biggest problem, and why this is a design issue, is that if you can't get a view, you can't do much about it. And then the last one is automation and orchestration. Human beings just can't keep up. And so the use of APIs has become huge. Automation, things that can link together, and obviously incident response, and you put all of that together. So those are sort of the 7 big principles around driving a design of zero trust. And the outcome, if you're lucky, is going to be a very good architecture based on those principles. So that's it for me. And I think there'll be some other views as well.
Yeah, great. I think the key things I think you have mentioned is about the real-time visibility, And I think that's a great approach, in especially when we talk about zero trust security. Yep. Okay. So with that, let's move on to Darren. Darren, would you like to address the questions?
Yeah, thank you, James. So the term zero trust, right, actually has created a lot of the marketing confusion, right? But actually, there is a security model that we all can use and follow. So in August 2020, NIST has published 800-207, the zero trust architecture. So with this, right, I highly recommend the audience here to have a read on it. So it's a 60-page publication. And one of the good things here is vendor neutral, because we all know, right, there's no one vendor that can cover all zero trust. So the publication covers multiple approach of zero trust and what are the logical components of zero trust architectures. So one of the important things that NIST 800-207 call out is identifying assets owned by the enterprise, which Evan has clearly talked about, right? Get a view on your enterprise. So this will be, the good way to talk about, why should we care as well? Because as the enterprise spend more money, increasing the pace for digital transformation, you usually increase the numbers of devices. So for us, we coin this as enterprise of things. So from cameras, POS machines, unmanned machines, increasing of workstation, connecting from everywhere, connected of IoT. So even devices in building management, right? Door access, HVACs. So those are, entry points for adversaries to come in. And we also see there's an increase of vulnerabilities and even zero-day exploit that's happening in the past, 12 months. So with the zero trust architecture, the first step we should know, right, is what is on the network. So then we can have the actionable visibility. So to limit the blast radius that we are looking into the different type of device that we have. So this is something that is clearly an issue that, not only you want to focus on the known devices, the agentable devices, you also need to have a view on those supporting elements like, even your conference room machines, all those. Right. Thank you.
Yes, I definitely agree. Yeah, we need to know what you have in your network, right, before you can start security. Can talk about security, right? So that's exactly, I think Darren has a very good way of presenting it. In the way we need to have visibility, right, for in terms of what you have in your devices. And Edwin, we also have a few things like real-time visibility, right? And AJ, we are talking about credentials control as well, right? So now let's move on. Maybe we have Vladimir from Gigamon.
Right.
Would you like to add on to this?
I think that both AJ, Evan, Darren, all of you guys made a wonderful point. There's not much that I can add to what you just have mentioned. Probably one topic that I would like to touch is visibility into data trust, into zero trust. So networks today, the parameters, as the speakers mentioned, the parameters is fluid. The parameters still exist, by the way. We all have parameters. It's just that the parameter moved from our data center, from our networks, for something that we had a complete control over it, to something that we can't really control. We have the cloud, which some of it is ours, some of it belongs to somebody else. We have our partners. We have users working from home. And the reality is that when people work from home, it's not just us working, but we share the network with our family as well. And since and there's not really micro-segmentation or segmentation at the home branch, right? It's all one network. So if, let's say, my daughter's computer is compromised, that in turn bring issues to the networks that everybody is connected to. So visibility into all of the traffic, all of the data, everything that moves around and that defines zero trust, it is very important. It's not just in terms of south, north, south, and east-west traffic, but also visibility within encrypted traffic as well. A lot of the traffic is encrypted. We need to have the capabilities. The policy enforcers, when they make decisions, they need to have that visibility so that the right policies can be applied. And that actually can be a challenge because, as was mentioned here, we don't have a complete control of everything that floats over the network. Some of the endpoints are not managed, cannot be managed, not because we don't want to, but they could be legacy devices. This could be IoT devices. Some of the networks and some of the systems that we're using don't even belong to us. When you look at today's compromisations or today's incidents, it's majority of them come from third-party networks that for some reason we have granted access to our resources and the vulnerabilities. All of a sudden, vulnerabilities of your partners become your vulnerabilities as well. And this is what is currently being exploded by the bad guys with the great success. And this is one of the challenges that Zero Trust is aiming to resolve. One thing I think that Evan, I really like the 7 points that you mentioned from Forrester. Actually, I have them listed up as well, but you beat me to it. Thank you for that. One of the somebody mentioned here that Zero Trust is a journey. It's not one technology. And the news publication 207 is a wonderful start. You could really refer to it. I've read that publication a couple of times, and it's a good starting point. But there are pitfalls. There's several pitfalls that organizations need to avoid. First of all, you can't really get it perfect. You have to settle for the things that you can achieve immediately, right? And you work out your journey. It's a journey. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. The other point is that assets identification, not just data, but data, assets, applications, data flows, workflows. That is a really fundamental, because if you don't know what you have to monitor, what you have to protect, and how to build the trust relationship between those components, then it's going to be very difficult to accomplish, to achieve Zero Trust, or to start the journey to Zero Trust. And the other pitfall that we see organizations falling into is that over-relying on identity and access management. And because it's easy to achieve, a lot of the organizations already have the resources to achieve strong IAM. They also fall into it because most of the attacks are because of compromised credentials. And if you over-rely on credentials, at the moment this thing is compromised, then the things fall apart. One of the, I used to be compromise recovery investigator. I work with real life breaches. And one of the most dangerous breaches I've seen so far are the one when credentials authorities have been compromised. So those are a couple of points that I would like to mention, and in due course, probably I can chip a little bit more. Thank you.
Wow. All right. That's really in-depth for this approach of Zero Trust, especially when there's so much going on right now. Okay.
Right.
So I think let's move on to Henry. Henry from Tufin. What's your point on this Zero Trust security, and why should we actually take the time to look at it?
Yeah. So we have heard the panelists talk about a lot of things, and it's actually interesting, right, to really define what Zero Trust actually is in your network environment. Right? Is it a blueprint? Is it a framework or technologies that we should adopt, or even a vendor solution, right? Like what Darren has mentioned earlier. He did mention about there's no single solution that can actually address this challenge in the organization. And so for customers who are looking or embarking on a Zero Trust project, they should seriously consider about adopting different solutions, and they have to look at the way that the different solution can actually integrate together, so that to give them the functionality, right? We back to the Forrester 7 Zero Trust elements, right? The ecosystem. If you have a chance to look at the diagram, they actually put the visibility and analytics, and then automation as two circles across all the different workload, the people, the network, the devices, right? So it's actually important to start off with we have heard so many times visibility. That I think is one of the most fundamental way to start off. You must be able to see what is happening in your environment. Then you can properly define how you want to protect your environment itself. And also, micro-segmentation is some that a lot of people wanted to implement, but it's not as simple as what we thought it is, right? Because the challenge with the network today, especially if you have a large legacy network, you want to segment your network, it's not a simple task. So we have to seriously consider, how to leverage on different solutions to help us maximize the kind of implementation that we want to do, right? How to segment the network properly, how we can actually start off with, implementing zero trust in our network.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Henry. Now, I have seen a lot of questions coming in right now. Okay, and we are going to try to address them as much as possible. So I'm just going to combine maybe the first few questions that we have, mainly from the audiences. The first question mainly is about how does COVID-19, right, and the post work from anywhere, flexibility, how does it actually influence the zero trust architecture in the way of is there really a new standard of security for zero trust? Yeah. So I'm just going to combine these few questions. So hopefully you can address this based on the new norm based on COVID-19. Right? Anyone would like to volunteer? Can raise your hands or give me a wing.
I can go first.
All right, sure. Evans, go ahead.
Yeah, look, I think that what we've all noticed, obviously, is this work from home or work from anywhere. This has caused a need around, and I'd focus more on the context-aware portion of authorization. So when people read about buzzwords like SASE, really what we're getting into now is this ability to generate access for people based on context. That context could be where. So I'm at home, I'm in a cafe, I'm at office. It also has to do with what I'm using. So am I using a corporate laptop? Am I using a cell phone? Did I find something lying in a ditch that happens to have internet connectivity? And then on top of that, it's what am I trying to access? So to give you an example, I'm in the sales world. So if I want to access salesforce.com, they'll probably grant me access from just about anywhere. If I'm trying to access the actuals, our SAP system, they may decide that if I'm in a cafe, it's a no-go, but if I'm at home, I can have access. So that's what we're getting around context. And that's the biggest change over the last 15 months is companies are trying to figure out how do I generate that context? And then how do I make really good decisions around it? And so there's no one answer, by the way. There's lots of technology, there's lots of process, and there's a lot of people involved in getting this done. That's probably the big shift that's come out. Now, the second thing is kind of the silver lining of all of this is companies have been forced to move from talking about transition to actually having to go through digital transformation, whether they want to or not. So I think everyone on this panel has probably heard for the last decade, everyone talks about digital transformation. Very few have done anything about it. Well, in the last 15 months, it's absolutely had to be done, no choice. And a lot of companies did this in a very, very fast manner. And now they're coming back and revisiting. So if I talk about short, midterm, and long term. Short term was capacity, making sure people could function. Midterm, people started having regrets. I did this. What's it going to do to my business? And then longer term, they're starting to firm up. How do I create policy? How am I going to do this the right way for the longer term? And in some cases, it's keeping what you've done. Some cases, it's rolling it back. And in other cases, it's modifying the deployment. So that's really what's happened over the last 15 months. And I'll hand it over to whoever else wants to add something.
Yeah, I think let me just add on to what Evan has said. And Evan has very broadly given, I think the challenges as most companies have faced in COVID-19. But I'm going to focus on two specific aspects that I see a lot of customers and a lot of companies struggle with. One is managing their remote access, right? And if you look at the statistics, consistently breaches on your endpoint or the users through phishing and breaches through vendors access is something that is consistently be one of the main impacts of remote working. Now, when it comes to remote access, traditionally that has been leveraging virtual private networks. But virtual private network by nature works on a basis of trust, which means that as long as you're on a company-owned laptop or have access to VPN credentials, it gives you full enterprise network access, which doesn't meet with the most of the requirements of zero trust, where you want to have a little bit of segmentation, visibility, and control into how users are accessing the resource, especially from outside world. And this is where I believe the principles of zero trust can be applied. But what you want to do is you move from just a bare VPN. You want to be able to have better visibility into how users are accessing, be able to granularly control what the users are accessing. So, for example, a user who needs just access maybe to his PC back in the office or maybe to a particular server, it doesn't need to be given complete enterprise access, right? So these are some of the things where zero trust definitely is going to make a big difference. The second part is people are really struggling with is endpoint access. Now, as people are moving outside your organization, which means that your support organization, the way how applications are being provisioned to the users, they are being able to given access to various things that they need to be productive on the endpoint is changing quite a lot. And what this means is that additional privileges consistently needs to be given to the users. And if they're developers or you're looking at power users, for all practical purpose, it doesn't make sense for them to just keep calling the help desk when sitting at home. Enterprises tend to give them admin access or administrator level access so that they can install software, makes those changes. And this exposes them to one big risk, because any compromise of their endpoint means that the attacker now has those admin privileges and then can log on to various resources within the enterprise as well. So this is where I would say having to have the principle of least privilege or enforce the principle of least privilege, where each user is just given the bare minimum to make him productive, but at the same time ensuring that he doesn't have excessive privilege that can provide sharp weapons to an attacker is very essential. But I think zero trust fundamentally means that you need to go into the assume breach mentality, right? It's a mentality shift. Rather than trusting everyone, where you're going as you assume that the user or the asset or the session is in some way compromised, and then you go through a process of validating that access, granting access, and then being have a complete visibility into that entire cycle. With that, let me hand it back to you, James.
Well, perfect. I have seen, I think Evan has suggested about the long term, the short term, right? Goals that we have, right? We need to actually try to have the ability to connect back to the office work environment so that we can get our work production. I think that is one key things that we have addressed here, right? Anyone would like to add on, because the questions is more towards how can we, is there really a new standard of security when we move towards COVID-19, right? Maybe Darren,
maybe I
like
can,
to
maybe I can
Yeah,
add on
thank you.
here is, first we talk about, initial of COVID-19, many companies scrambles to get remote access into the network. And now we are, 16 months into COVID, and customers, and we have customers trying to have staggered routine, right? Let's say, for example, 3 day a week, 2 day a week, going back to offices. So this poses a new kind of security threat as well. We call this, a device decay, because device compliance is something that is, a key for, security framework. And when you are at home, you are being polluted by other whatever devices that you might have at home. When you connect back to the enterprise, right, then these are the things that you may be able to spread to the organization as well. So having the zero trust principle, always inspect the things and always inspect the devices, having continuous manner of, inspecting devices is one of the key things that whether you're connecting from SASE or going to the enterprise, so you always must have a view of what is connecting to your enterprise so that you can then have actionable visibility, then you can, move on to that. So these are things that often, when we talk to customer always ask, oh, I want to have a work from anywhere solution. But in fact, we actually need to have both, right? Those that are on-prem, those are our remote workers.
Yeah. Okay. I would like to touch up a little bit that there was a comment here about the standards and architectures for zero trust. First of all, there's no standards on zero trust architecture. There's the publication that is NIST 800-207 that is provided guidelines. And I would like to, for all of the audience, standards means that there's a standard issuing entity such as ISO, ENISA, or something like that. that set of specific guidelines of compliance, of conformance, right? Zero trust is architecture. It's a combination of technologies. And you would never see a standard for a combination of technology. There's no security standard for integrated systems. When you look at ISO suits, this is more or less like a policy conformance that you have to do certain things, but it doesn't really tells you how to build the architecture. So there would be more and more reference architectures. There will be more and more best practices. But I doubt that you would see in the near future, let's say ISO or ENISA or any other standard with certification framework on zero trust, right? That is one point. In terms of there was another question in terms of what architecture is. Well, in architecture of zero trust, this is a little bit of a debate, but that's why we're having this conversation, by the way. What is the best architecture to implement zero trust? And I don't think that we have the answer yet. Well, we have the guidelines, microsegmentations, policy enforcement, identify data and assets and everything. But everything boils down to the fundamentals of defense in depth. And defense in depth is a concept that has existed for many years. SAPSA outlined defense in depth extremely well. SOAR also, to a certain extent, to touch on it, and there are a lot of frameworks that touch on it. I'm actually honestly waiting to see how the whole game would play out, because zero trust is a journey, and we're just at the beginning of this journey. And by the way, the reason why we're having conversations about zero trust, it's not about something that happened today or not about something that happened maybe 10 years ago. It's something that happened 60 or 70 years ago when the TCP/IP protocols was designed and built by DARPA. All of our devices, everything that runs pretty much our business and digital transformation today is over TCP/IP protocol. And TCP/IP protocols was built on trust. Everybody is trusted, right? Which in turn creates the issues that we're having right now. So the journey just have started, and it's going to be a very exciting one. And I really want to see where it's going to take us.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to what Vlad has mentioned. I totally agree. The journey has just started for everyone, and for customers, especially for the past years where we accelerate into digital transformation, adopting of clouds, relying heavily on in the cloud environment. It is always a challenge for the security peoples, right? Anyone that's managing security become a nightmare, because to gain that visibility, we talk about the visibility, it becomes a total different story. In the network, as a network administrator, a security administrator, I can see everything that's happening. But right now in the cloud, part of the information is like, in the cloud, I can't see it clearly, right? And the cloud guys, the cloud, the DevOps, the cloud ops people, they may know what they need to do, but typically they're not really security guys. And for the application developers, they don't really care. They don't, their priorities is to develop their apps, deliver their apps to the user, right? Security is the least concern. Even if they're considered on security, they are more on their focus will be mainly on the code security, not the network security. So we have to look at the security in different perspectives, right? Network security, the different levels of security, right? Network security, application security, even the cloud security. And the most important thing for me, I look at it is that, the way that we traditionally manage security policies in the network environment, we have to change how we can look at it. We should actually decouple the policies, the security policies, from the entire network itself. We should look at it centrally and define centralized policies on what are allowed, what kind of connections are allowed, what kind of connections are not allowed, and then it can be applied across all my platform, regardless of whether it's on-prem, in the cloud, my private clouds, or my virtualized platform. Right. This is what I see is important for users to start off with.
Yep. Perfect. Yep. So, thank you, Henry. Yeah, I see that. I think in conclusion is that the zero trust architecture is really there's no one solution fit all. You have to have a compromise of different solutions, right? And it depends on your organization needs in order to actually deliver a zero trust security. Yep. So I have another few more questions. Maybe I would like to address. Is can maybe not this one. There are many solutions for endpoint, right? However, what about the mobile or tablets?
Okay. If I can
Yeah.
touch a little bit on that one, thank you very much. So first of all, and Henry, you made a very good point in terms of visibility. Visibility is critical. In cybersecurity, the thing that knocks you down is the one that you don't see it coming, right? And this is, by the way, this is one of the fundamental issues that the zero trust is trying to address. First, you would be compromised one way or another. Just deal with it. And don't trust anyone until specifically it is said. And in order to enforce policies, you must have visibility into the traffic that is coming into your network, and that is outgoing to your network as well. It's not just what comes in, but what comes out. Because once the bad guys comes in, they have to take it out. And you may not be able to detect always when they are in. But at the moment when they try to get something out, you must have visibility into the outbound traffic as well. And you also have to keep in mind is that the nature of today compromisations, as I mentioned earlier, majority of it is compromised credentials, which means that you already authenticated with something that has been trusted by the system. And what really raises suspicions is when information needs to be extracted to unauthorized locations, which brings to the point of mobile devices. So a lot of the attacks may or may not come through mobile devices. Now, you will not be able to control all of the mobile devices. That is a given. Organizations are struggling to control company issued devices. Never mind somebody else. And banks, by the way, if you have to look into the industry, the financial industry has approached this problem really, really well, because they have their banking system accessed by pretty much everyone in the world, and they have no control over the devices, right? The way they control it on the receiving point. And that is actually not an easy thing to accomplish. What we see right now happening in the financial industry didn't start it yesterday. It started probably 20 years ago. And by the way, they did it because they were the compliance actually drove this adoption. But for mobile devices, there are a couple of technologies that can be implemented right away. Dual-factor authentication, for example, would resolve the issue with trusted devices, right? You already have the password, and what dual-factor authentications will do is that will reinforce the trust, making sure that you're the one that you said it is. And also not just authenticating the end user, but also authenticating the server as well. It's also a mutual multi-factor authentication that needs to be implemented. When in doubt, just deny access, right? And that is actually, it's a very difficult thing to do, because yes, we like security, but as Henry implied, convenience is more important than security. So there have to be a fundamental mind shift into the user behavior. And in order to achieve security, we have to sacrifice some of the convenience that we get with the mobile devices. And it's a tough job. Yes, so Evan, please.
I just wanted to jump in because it's a very good question. I will have a very short answer. There are very few companies that do this. We just happen to be one of them. So the reason I wanted to suggest, I don't disagree with anything that Vlad said. What I wanted to tell you is that as he had mentioned, the financial industry has put a lot of investment. They're typically very forward investing when it comes to security. So if you're looking to do mobile first operating systems, you're right. There are very few companies that do it. We have what's called Harmony. So I don't usually pitch, but in this case, our Harmony line does all the mobile first operating systems. If you do have a combination of internal users, managed devices, and external users, unmanaged, then we also do have a consumer solution called Zone Alarm, and we have an SDK that companies like banks are using to inject the security into the app itself. And that becomes transparent to the user. So whenever one makes a comment about usability, 100%. The reason adoption for mobile is so low is that they will always sacrifice security for usability. So you have to make it transparent. It needs to be kind of hidden in the background. And if you do have that problem and you need the help, just pop by our website or give us a call and we can help you out.
Yeah, perfect. Right. Okay, I think we have a few more questions to address. I think the question previously was about a mobile phone. I think, yes, we do have preventions for mobile phone, and that is something that customers can consider. Right. So Evan has and Vladimir has actually addressed questions. Next one, for SME customers, right? How can they use the Zero Trust architecture in a straightforward manner? Maybe we can put this conceptual more for the small businesses, right? What is the approach that they can use for Zero Trust security?
I'll try to answer this. Yeah. For SMEs, actually, it's actually pretty straightforward to, we talk about automation, orchestration. It's actually extremely complicated to implement in the large environment. So I think for SME, it becomes an advantage because you have a smaller environment. It's easiest to plan and to start about, orchestrating or automating the change process in your environment. And also, by implementing security policies, how we can actually automate that process. And this ties really in line with your Zero Trust planning, right? The project that you want to do, you want to embark on. Because, imagine with all the different, the ever-changing parameters in your network, with all the remote users coming in, how are we going to enforce security policies effectively? We have to look at, the traditional way of managing it is not effective enough. It's error prone, it's slow process, right? What we really need to do is to relook at the operation. How are we going to make changes as quick as possible? For example, if we detect something that is not right, we see, from the SIEM solution or from other places, the vulnerability assessment solution, they give us information that, this thing is not correct. It doesn't look right in the network. It's suspicious. We want to block it as soon as possible. And this is where, by integrating the different solutions that actually help us, right? Because, you have solutions that do the detection, and then you have the automation tools to help you do the enforcement almost instantaneously in your network environment. And this is what I think is important for, for SME to really look at, how they can actually automate the process.
Great, thanks, Henry.
If I just want to add to Henry, to what Henry just said, for SMEs, you can't have a Zero Trust architecture without having the basic fundamentals of security first. So before we get to Zero Trust, fix the security that you have. And therefore, for SME, there's a lot of resources. It doesn't have to be expensive, by the way. It doesn't have to break the bank. I will always start with education. Educate yourself. And you would realize that probably 70% of the security problems can be solved with a proper education and a proper IT hygienes. Cloud services. A lot of SMEs today, they're moving towards cloud services. Cloud providers, they have very good guidelines for security, but they're not going to implement it for you. By the way, you have to implement it yourself, and they have very good frameworks for it. And last but not least, if it doesn't have to be connected, don't connect it. We tend, and the moment we get something that has Wi-Fi or an app or something, first thing we do, we connect it to the internet, right? You know how difficult it is to find a fridge that is not connected to the internet nowadays, or a TV? It's very, very difficult. And it's just like, don't connect it if it doesn't have to be. It just fall back to the least privilege principle, or least connection principle.
I see. All right, thank you. Next, we have a few more questions that we can address. The question goes, right, we have some internal developer apps and solutions. So how would Zero Trust affect the access, and how can we resolve the access issue we decided to go for this Zero Trust solution, right? Maybe this question is more targeted into applications, right? How can we actually have Zero Trust security within this application world? Anyone? Okay,
Yep.
Evans? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll happily go. I saw that one in there. So I'll just sort of back it up to a couple of things. What you have to do when you have your own applications is kind of going back to a lot of what we started this conversation with. So define who needs access, when they need it, and where. And then you have to be able to create policies for those decisions. Now, if you don't have the technology to actually create those types of policies, then you'll have to go searching the market for maybe all or some of what you need. If you're out there looking in the market, you're going to need something that's application aware and has to be user aware, specifically context. And then it has to take that information, be able to create and enforce policy on the back of that. So a lot of the vendors here are involved in one of those aspects, right? Either the visibility concept or creating those policies. So without naming any specific vendor, those are the kind of activities you need to go through when you're evaluating this. At the end of the day, it doesn't have to stop access to what you're doing. You do have to think really hard about who needs it and when and why. And that's these are the design principles. And they're not simple, by the way. I don't think anyone on this panel any of this is easy, but it is kind of necessary. And all you have to do is read the news to find out how necessary it is. So regardless of the industry you're in right now, you make mistakes around access and all of a sudden things start to go very, very wrong. So that would be my input on that question.
Sure. Thanks, Evan.
Okay.
Yep.
If I just sorry, if I may. So,
Sure.
and Evan, you're right. There's two things about built-in applications, so any application for that matters, the way they're built and the way they're used. So the way they built, if it's a world vendor like Microsoft, SAP, or anyone else for that matter, yes, we know that they tend to be kind of like okay. But for the internal applications, for internal custom developed applications, one thing that everybody needs to answer is that how do you know that your applications are secure? That they built the design. Built and implemented into a secure manner. So you have to look into the application itself to make sure that the application, by implementing the application itself, we don't create additional risks and introduce additional vulnerabilities. Because if you do that, then Zero Trust will mitigate some problems, but you have much bigger problems that you have to deal with. The other thing to what Evan just said, the micro-segmentations will really help you to contain the breach. And then the rest of the solutions is pretty much all of the representative on this forum today. We have one or another way to address the issue. But you have to look at both ends, not just how we're going to use the application, but how they're built and how they're designed and built.
Yeah. So if I can just add on here, I think there are three critical aspects for a self-built or locally built developed application, and they are in a better place because they have ways of making changes that may be required to secure the application as well. So if you look at three specific things, one of course is protecting the application itself, and that is where principles such as least privilege and micro-segmentation comes into play, right? You have a data tier, your application tier, you have a front end. Ideally, you would want to harden those. You'd want to see that there's no trust relation between the two other than what is basically required for the application to run. Moving on, you just want to ensure that the user who is accessing it is now secure. So which means going with a stronger authentication, being able to validate that the users access through continuous policy evaluation. Second is what asset is that user coming from? Is that asset secure? So ideally you would want to be able to have some level of validation to see whether is it an asset that he's trying to access from the first time. Is that having some protecting security controls in place, and there are enough and more technologies that allow you to do that. Third, of course, is the session protection, which means that you need to have the encryption technology in place to ensure that the channel from the user or the end user onto your application is completely secure, and you're using strong encryption. So quickly, right, I think that would be a good summary for any developer to help secure his application, while still applying some of the principles of Zero Trust.
Yeah, and just to add on to this, right? Actually, this will be directly related to supply chain attack as well. So, for example, if you have vendor that's coming in to help you to develop or set up stuff, so you must have a way to be able to, access their devices that is connected to your network, right? So, and one of the issues that most companies have when they talk about zero trust is where do they start, right? Because our advice is to always start small. Don't think that I want to transform my whole organization to be on zero trust, right? You will kill yourself. And one of the things that to know is what do you want to protect. So if you have that, crown jewel that you want to protect, where is it coming from? Then work on that concept and then expand out from there, because then that will help you to go into zero trust in a longer term and sustainable, right? So these are the things that know what you need to protect, get a view on it. Yeah, this is my comment.
Yeah, perfect, Darren. Actually, Darren, we do have one more question. I think this is more addressed towards the IoT, right? How do we address security in the aspect of OT, right? We have things like automation, guided vehicles, smart forklift. Do we actually have a limitation in the way how we can secure those OT devices?
Okay, so definitely in terms of the OT's side of the story, right, it's definitely increasing on the plate of the CISOs and many companies, right? First, again, fundamental, get a view on what is happening in the OT space. Then you'll be able to look at, because OT is a availability first approach, where most of the stuff is, we want to make sure that business always go first, then security is second. But there are more people that's targeting this area. We want to be able to have views on that. And what is the so-called IT and OT conversions that we are looking at? Is there, because we want to have, efficiency and productivity on, getting more out of OT. So we will anchor it and hook into OT, right? But we want to have this link, right, to be clear, so that anything that is going through OT and IT, then we want to be able to have it and then stop it at the end of the on the bridge, right, between the IT and OT.
Yeah.
So at the same time, we have a couple of customers, right, that we're talking about in the OT space. Let's say, for example, the Colonial Pipeline that is having, so the attack is on IT, but they shut it down for the OT because they are not aware of what is happening in the space of the OT, right? So that is something that is critical as well. Yeah.
Just to add on to that, what's interesting in the OT space is there's a lot of companies that do what's called discovery. So it gets really specific. It can be medical devices. Once you have that discovery, a lot of the technology you already own, you can apply to the OT world, because at the end of the day, policy is policy. So yes, OT devices speak another language, but it's transitioning now over the same networks. So the interesting thing now is if you can discover it, you can actually create policy around it, and you can really start to enforce what you need. The future of all of this is these small lines of code that you can stick on the devices, but that comes down to the manufacturers of the OT more so than the vendors that do security and policy enforcement. So that is starting to happen. Like, we actually have a line of code that sits in GitHub that people can put on in their device when they're coding it, but a lot of OT is hard coded. So start with discovery, then you can build policy largely with a lot of what you have. And as Darren just mentioned, a lot of times now it's flowing into the same data center, or at least close to the same data center that IT is in, because it's all the same network. And so even if it's segmented, you're largely going to have access to the same set of technology, and you can build policy around it.
Yeah, I think to add on, Darren mentioned a point that visibility is key for OT. The reason that becomes very critical is OT has some specific challenges. On one hand, you have legacy devices just cannot be updated, or the update cycles are far beyond what are normal traditional IT patch cycles, right? So you always have some device using a vulnerable, sometimes even a Windows 98 or even older systems. So those needs to be protected, right? So visibility becomes the key there. The second aspect is, since these devices, even the modern OTs, you talk about digital cameras. I think Vlad talked about fridge that is connected. The big challenge with it is, the vendor life cycle is very short. They've developed that fridge. After 2 years, the new model comes in, which means that after 2 years, there's no updates. And now you have a fridge sitting at your home or anywhere for the next 8 years that is going to be vulnerable, right? So these are some of the fundamental aspects that we need to take into consideration in OT. So again, visibility, segmentation, and least privilege, or ensuring that only the right people have access, is something that is absolutely critical for any OT IoT environment.
Absolutely, yeah, that's right.
Right. Okay. I think we are coming to the last 15 minutes mark. Maybe I would like to invite all the panelists, right? How would you recommend the organization to start with Zero Trust, right? Give them an overview if they want to implement Zero Trust, share your solutions. How can you help them to go through this Zero Trust journey, right? Maybe we can start with Henry. Henry, to you.
Yeah, yeah. So, earlier I mentioned about, automation orchestration, and if you guys are aware that Tufin is actually into automation orchestration of security policies in your network environment. So we cover security policies across the cloud and the on-prem environment, right? And this is, with instinct to the Zero Trust, what Tufin does provide with customers is a user-defined unified security policies. We talk about, regulation check. These are just generic guidelines, right? It's more important for the network administrators, the security administrators to define the parameters, the protection that they need for their entire network. And they can actually make use of the Tufin Unified Security Policies to create a central policies to enforce, a compliance policy to enforce across all the security policies in their network environment. And we talk about segmentation, segmentation is challenging, right? And that's a key idea. What we want to do is we want to help customers to simplify the process of segmenting their network. So by leveraging on the unified security policy, if I have a physical limitation, I can't segregate my physical network effectively, I can still segment them using the security policies that I need to enforce in my network environment, right? But most importantly, we talk about, I think earlier one of the questions was into the application. We know that a lot of users, a lot of customers are into their own development of their own application, all right? And, with the new concept of, shift left, moving security into the early stage of the development, into the CI/CD pipeline, all right? It is important for customers that has adopted clouds, they're developing their own applications, using containers, serverless function in the network environment to really, rethink about how they have to enforce security policies in the serverless environment, the containers, and in the cloud environment, and to make that process much earlier, right? When we implement the application and we start to protect the application, it's too late in the process. We need to do it in advance. While we're in the development stage, we have to start implementing our security guardrails to protect them. And this is where Tufin comes in. We work with all the various solutions, right? For example, we can actually help to analyze the policies, and if we need to do enforcement, we can actually push the rule down to the cloud environment or to the physical firewalls in the network environment. And this is how automation orchestration can actually help to improve your process or to start in your Zero Trust journey.
Right. Thank you, Henry. Next we have Vladimir for.
Thank you. Thank you. It's like wonderful points. But one thing that I would like to advise everyone, I think that Henry mentioned, you have to start small, right? And it start with what you need to protect and why do we need to protect it in the first place. And also I would advise everyone to hold back on the choosing of the technology. If you start with the technology first, it's a never-ending spiral. Things will spin out of control very quickly because it is very difficult to implement. The Zero Trust is a combination of many technologies. So hold on your technology decision until we are very clear of what are the objectives that you need to accomplish. And this is the first and fundamental step that everyone need to do before they even continue the journey of Zero Trust and talk to any of us, any of the vendors, and consider any of the solutions that we all represent here today.
Sure, thank you, Vladimir. Next, I think Evans, would you like to address how would you like to advise the customers on the Zero Trust architecture? Yep.
Yeah, look, let me just add on to what's been suggested already. Number one, I would say get assessed, right? So I think Vlad just spoke about this a little bit. Whether you're working with a vendor, a partner, a distributor, most of the companies you're going to interface with will have something on offer for you to get assessed. And with that assessment, it will start to help you define a problem. What I would suggest is the next step is to go with some sort of a workshop, whether that's external or you need external help. Typically, this involves bringing in architects. And again, I think your vendor, your partners, your disties can all help you with this. And the outcome of that is going to be where the problem statement. And then I think you can get into this idea of design, right? So there's a lot of literature. Pick the standard, pick the company you want to follow in terms of how to go through the design process, but that's what you need to do. And what you'll start to find is gaps. Here's what I do have, here's what I don't have. And then you're going to have to blend it with things like budgets. Do I have budget? Do I have senior management buy-in? If you don't have senior management buy-in, nothing's going to happen. And it won't happen overnight. It's going to take you time. It'll probably take you many projects, and it'll probably take you many years. And that's probably not what anyone wants to hear, but that's just the reality of how you get from A to B typically. And so I think those are the things you need to do. Obviously, the pitch from my angle is that we do about 90% of everything in the security world, right? That's what the big four do in terms of security. We either build or buy companies, stitch them all together to give out these solutions. And so that's what we have, is a lot of consolidated tech to help people. And then we partner pretty much with everyone. I think we partner with everyone on this call. So you'll see a lot of complementary solutions that exist in the world. And that comes down to, vendors are starting to have to partner because we all have our strengths. And I think that's where the consultants or influencers or SIs or disties all come together, is to help bring together enough technology to make that solution reality. So it's a strange answer to that question because there's not a huge pitch involved in it, but get some help. And so get assessed, go through a workshop to get people in to help you think through the problem, then come out the back of it and you can really blueprint where you want to go. Then you just need to get buy-in. You need your senior management to agree. And once they've agreed and you can set budgets, the rest of it is just a lot of execution and a lot of hard work.
Perfect. That's a wonderful answer, Evan. AJ, would you like to address as well?
Yeah, sure. So I think fundamentally, right, zero trust is a journey. I think that's been mentioned enough and more times. It also depends on the ecosystem, right? So I think Vlad mentioned there's no one vendor that can come and say, I give all, help you solve your zero trust solution, right? So this, it comes to three key fundamental parts. How are you going to validate your users? So do you have the technology and the process in place to authenticate, validate, and give, real-time validate of what that user is trying to access for, right? Or context-based access. Second is, how are you, managing the asset? Are you in a position to, implement least privilege or enforce least privilege across each assets that you have? That can be your heterogeneous environment, your Windows, Unix, Mac environment, and various, services, web services, and cloud services that you use. Last is, how are you managing sessions? Are you in a position now to provide visibility and, have complete, auditability across all the sessions that your users are doing across your application environment? And last, right, like a journey, it depends on your partners. It requires on, a depth of, being able to integrate with the rest of your security ecosystem so that you have complete visibility into what each one of these tools and the users are doing at the end of the day. From Beyond Trust perspective, and if I can put this pitch, what we do is through universal privilege management, we apply it to have consistent access, whether it is within your office, whether you're a privileged user or someone sitting at home, and we help you, enforce least privilege across your entire IT and IS infrastructure.
Thank you, AJ. Darren?
Yeah, thank you all the panelists. I think all the information here is very, very valid. So first, zero trust is definitely here to stay. And because if you realize, right, if you look at the NIST 800-207, it's actually reflecting a lot of the security fundamentals that you can find in other frameworks, right? For example, the CIS framework, even in Singapore, the CSA recommendation, knowing your asset, etc. So really, right, the first step you should look at is maybe find a partners that can help you to assess what you have in terms of your security transformation. So I do see success that customer that engage with partners that are able to bring them through into not only just specific solution, but as a whole, right? So that they can move and have different work stream, either from the IAM part, the network segmentation part, and the application side, right? So and for Foscal, our mission here is to be able to actively defend for the enterprise of things. So we constantly do things like identification, access, segmentation, and enforce, and of course orchestrate with the vendors here, and because we understand that we definitely want customers to not go and rip and replace, saying that, oh, you want to go to zero trust, you got to change every damn thing on your organization. Definitely not, right? Because we need to preserve, we need to have cost saving and reinvest the things that you already invested. So orchestration, automation is definitely very important. And the way to be able to integrate with different technologies is also part of the evaluation criteria. So with that, this is something that we can help to provide, in a sense, look in things like the IT, IoT, even cloud space, and even OT, right? So many different areas that is joining, we have a perimeterless organization today. So let's start the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Darren. Now, I think for the audience, anyone who would like to have the 60 pages of the next report, Darren will be able to share with you. I think he has the most insight on the 60 pages. He has read through and probably digest everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just have just one last question for all the panelists here, right? What is the future of zero trust, right? Is it going to be a default norm for every companies to implement? And do you think there's actually some new upcoming technology that might change this model itself, right? Maybe you want to share some of the new technologies that your organization is coming up with to cope with this model, right? Do share with us your view on this. For that, maybe we can start with AJ from Beyond Trust.
Yeah, perfect. I think
Sure.
well, first of all, thanks for the question, and I'd like to invite all the audience to visit our website. We have a lot of white papers specifically focusing on zero trust models for your assets and for your user management. Now, like I said, a couple of things that I would just like to highlight is one. Least privilege, which is a fundamental aspect of zero trust, has been part and parcel of security advisory right from ages, but implementing it in principle has become a big challenge. You need to always mix user productivity, ease of use with actually the security requirements of deploying least privilege, especially on the endpoints and some of your core workloads. What Beyond Trust does through its endpoint privilege management is makes that very seamless using new technologies such as just-in-time, elevation for users. So which means that a regular users without having admin privileges is just given access, or the application is given a one-time token to carry out an admin task. And this can be as simple as changing an IP address on your address, which on Windows still requires admin privileges, or having to change your date and time, or installing programs or updating your libraries. The second aspect is being able to consistently apply this across your Unix and Linux environment, which are hosting critical workloads. Again, most enterprises struggle with sudo because of the fragmented management, whereas what we offer is a centralized management where you can offer least privilege consistently for users across maybe your real estate of Unix, Linux, and Mac environment, right? So when it comes to zero trust, one of the fundamental themes has always been enforce least privilege. And Beyond Trust makes it very easy and enables you to enforce it consistently across all of your workloads, whether it is on-prem, on the cloud, or across your virtual environment. And with that, let me hand it back to James.
Sure. Thanks, AJ. Evans, you are on mute. Would you like to address? Yep, thank you.
That's okay. I'm used to managing my audio. Yeah, so look, the future from our perspective is probably going, because we talked about design principle, what I really think the future is going to be is it's more consolidation and availability of things that you can use within design, and that includes integration. Specifically, what I would suggest is there will be new tools available when you get to design availability. So consider things like blockchain, AI, and these are primarily going to be used for more integration and automation. So I know there's a lot of buzz and there's all this hype around certain things, but they do have specific uses. And to give you an example, this is already in use in something that's called web application and API protection, which is, this has now become the modern replacement of the WAF. And what this does is it uses machine learning, and it sits behind APIs to do all of the work that you'd expect around analysis and policy management. And it has to do it in an automated fashion because human beings can't keep up. So the improvement on that is machine learning will move closer to an AI, right? And then when you bring in things like blockchain, it's going to let you do integrations that have chain of custody involved, right? So one of the big benefits in the blockchain world is immutability, and it's going to let you have chain of custody across multiple vendors, right? Multiple points of presence and integration. Those are really useful parts of that technology, as opposed to some of the pie in the sky stuff out there. So I'm not going to get into coins and all of that, but there is some definitely very useful things coming down the pipe. And some of them are already available. And so I think that's where the future is going, is you're going to see a lot more integration, a lot more consolidation, and those things will be available when you get into this philosophy of design. So you probably will have to revisit your design every year or so, right? Depending on how far out you plan.
Perfect. Yeah, blockchains is something new. I think that's something challenging, especially given the craze about this coins and all this. Yeah, that's really interesting. You can share on that. Next, I think we can have Vladimir from Bigamon.
I think those were excellent points. But in terms of what the future would bring for Zero Trust, I probably want to say the things that I want to see. In terms of technology, we have a wonderful technology. We have blockchain. We have session-initiated protocol standards that pretty much resolve all of the underlying security issues with IP, with TCP/IP protocol. So there's a very good technology that already can help us to address the Zero Trust. What I really would like to see is to make it easier to use, more user-friendly. More clearly defined guidelines. We have one publication. Would like to see more publications. And what I would expect to see that probably there would be, you can't really see the future. I would expect that there will be breakthrough in technology that will help us to achieve some of those objectives. And also I would expect to see vendor consolidation as well. I'm sure the Checkpoint, they already have their short list of vendors that they want to acquire in that area, probably. And so does everyone. I also would like to see visibility as a basic fundamental and default for Zero Trust. And those are some of the things that I would like to see. One thing that we have to consider is 5G. 5G, it will change fundamentally the way networks are accessed. And not just 5G in general, but multi-access edge computer. Bringing the access closer to the users would create challenges and opportunity for solutions for Zero Trust network.
Yeah.
So that's for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Vendor consolidation and 5G. Yeah, I think that's something that is really interesting.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we will see something that in the near future, because I think vendor consolidation is really something that is really hard, especially when we have to manage so many vendors together, and the customers need to keep continuously train their engineers to use their products, right? That's definitely one of the challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. It will happen. It definitely would happen. And it's like, just look at back of the mobile devices security. There were like 20 different vendors 15 years ago. How many are now there? I'm like, they're probably 3, and Checkpoint is one of them, by the way. So.
Yeah, and we did that through acquisition, right? So
exactly.
It is going to happen.
It is going to happen.
Is the big exit these days. If you're a startup, that's the exit. It's consolidation. You're getting acquired.
Yeah.
All right. I think moving up next, we have Henry from Tufin.
Yeah. So we talk about, is Zero Trust going to be a default norm? I would definitely see that it's going to be default norm for most for now, right? We will not know how it's going to evolve in the future, but the concept is actually a very, very sound concept of how we should look at security as a whole, right? But in terms of managing solution or getting solution to address a zero trust in your environment, it's definitely going to be a path, a difficult path, especially for the IT managers, the CISO to decide, what are the solutions that they have to adopt, to use to help them address this challenge, right? And like I mentioned earlier, I think a piecemeal solution will not work, right? You can't get individual silo solution to fix individual problems. We have to look at it in a bigger picture. Like Vlad mentioned about consolidation of vendors, but that is going to be a long path. And what I would say that if you are looking at a short-term deployment, you should look at how you're going to get all these solutions that you are looking at to make sure that they can actually work together seamlessly.
Yeah, thank you, Henry. Okay, we have the last few minutes for Darren Chen from Forescout.
Thank you. The last one, right? So most of the points have been covered by panelists. Thank you very much. And I think for Zero Trust, I definitely think that you'll be here to stay until maybe the next model that comes out. But what is important here is for organization, right? We need to find that common ground. So talking about common ground, you need to either have something that is you're able to counter the vendor, what are you trying to say, is it true? So at least you have a common ground. Large organization like NIST, they will be help you to do that. So of course we definitely want to see a few more publications so that we can have things to compare. And one of the things where I also like to see is how do we scale Zero Trust, right? Because we have customers that's in a comment talking about how do I deploy this in my regional office? Can there be a single policy decision point which is highlighted in NIST that I can enforce the different PEPs or the policy enforcement point across the globe, right? So these are things that we will want to be able to look at scalability, look at how sustainable is it, but it all comes back to the fundamental, right? Like for example, least privilege management, need to have segmentation, need to really know what you have on the enterprise, not only agentable devices and as well as unagentable devices. So these are the things that often that in fact going to 5G as well. So this will have a new era or new connectivity that will be able to impact us as well. So I believe one of the key takeaway here is to get an assessment, know what you have, and prioritize what you want to achieve with Zero Trust. Don't eat it. Don't eat the elephant whole. Eat it by chunks. Thank you.
All right, perfect, Darren. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we have come to the end of this panelist discussion. Okay, so once again, I think let us reintroduce our panelists. We have firstly AJ from Beyond Trust, right? Evans from Checkpoint, Darren from Forescout, Henry from Tufin, and lastly, of course, we have Benimir from Gigamon, right? So thank you for your time, and we hope that the audience have a good takeaway from this session, right? And please continue to stay on this platform because we are going to have the quizzes in the next segment, right? Right. Thank you, guys. See you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, once again, I would like to give a big thank you to all the speakers today for sharing with us the direction of Zero Trust in Singapore. And we are so sorry, we know that 1 hour is too short to address all the questions here, but don't worry, we will address them maybe after the event. We'll actually send you an email or have a meeting with you to address all the questions that you have posted today. I really like the enthusiasm from the crowd and great participation from you. Okay, coming up next is the most exciting session for the day. Now let's move on to the ultimate trivia quiz. The first winner will receive up to $300 worth of shopping vouchers. We really hope all of you can participate in this quiz to win away the amazing prize. Okay. Okay, here are some of the steps to participate in our quiz. First of all, for those who are viewing this webinar on your full screen, I could need your help to exit from your full screen. So the question will appear on the left screen. And to participate in this quiz, you have to select your answer at the right panel. Okay, at the right panel. So the quiz consists of multiple choice questions and true and false questions. Your score will be tabulated based on how fast you choose the correct answer. And if you are our vendors or IT reseller, I'm so sorry you are not eligible for this quiz. Hi, studio, please push out the quiz, please. Okay, you should be able to see the pad, the quiz to enter. Please enter your name, your email address to participate in this quiz. So we'll actually wait for 1 minute for you to log into the quiz. So ladies and gentlemen, we hope all of you can participate in challenge yourself in this ultimate trivia quiz to win away the amazing prizes. So the first place will win $300 voucher, second place $200 voucher, and third place $100 vouchers. So please provide your name, your email to participate in this quiz. And after 13 seconds, we are going to start our ultimate trivia quiz. Are you ready? Let's go. Okay, let's take a look at the first question. Visibility and automation is the key for a successful zero trust project. True or false? True or false? The answer is true. Wow, everyone got it correctly. Fantastic. Okay, let's go to the next question. Wow, Eric Wong, you are leading now. Good job. Okay, let's go to question number 2. Question number 2. When implementing zero trust, should one consider IoT or IIoT devices as well? Yes, only if they are IP camera, or yes only if they use OMVIF protocol, or no. Okay, the answer is yes. We got 88% of people getting correctly. Let's see who is the leading now. Oh, congratulations, Edwin. You are leading now. Okay, question number 3. Good try, everyone. Let's carry on. Question number 3. What should be the first phrase of the Zero Trust Initiative? What should be the first phrase of the Zero Trust Initiative? So what's the answer? Four more seconds. Okay, the answer is what is on the network. We got 52% of people getting correctly. Let us see what is the... Wow! Bravo, Evan. You're still leading. Very good. Okay, we got Quantum and Rubin catching up. Okay, question number 4. What is not the best practices for zero trust? Question number 4. What is not the best practices for zero trust? Verify every user, enforce least privilege, validate every asset, or make a system trust. The answer is make a system trust. We got 62% of people getting correctly. Who is leading now? Wow, Gotham. Congratulations. Edwin, Paul, Aris is catching up now. Okay, let's go to the question number 5. Question number 5. What are some of the main assumptions or principles of zero trust network? What are some of the main assumptions or principles of zero trust network? The answer is all of the above. We got 60% of people getting correctly. Let's look at the leadership board now. Wow, Edwin, you are back to the top now. Enris and Alex Chu is catching up. Look like we will have a winner soon. Last chance for you to click faster. Last question, question number 6. Zero Trust Network is an architecture, not a specific technology. There are a number of security, application, cloud, and network technologies that are used when building Zero Trust Network architecture. Is true or false? 4 more seconds. The answer is true. Almost everyone got it correctly. Okay, let's look at the result. Who is the champion for today? The third place goes to Alex Chu. Second place is Aris. And champion, the first place is Irvin. Thank you very much. Wow, bravo, Irvin. You are leading almost every question. Okay, once again, congratulations to the top 3 winners today. Our team will contact you after the webinar. We thank you very much for your participation. So ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the session. If you have any further question, do reach out to any of us from Westcon and our cybersecurity vendors, Beyond Trust, Checkpoint, Forescout, Gigamon, and Tufin. Before I end the webinar today, I have 2 announcements to make. First of all, I have a good news for you. The Learn and Earn contest will be extended to the end of this month. So for those who have not watched the video and done the quizzes, you still have time to watch and earn a total of $25 GrabFood vouchers for yourself by 30th June. So feel free to visit the Learn and Earn contest page to watch all the videos. So the next announcement, we also could appreciate if you could take a couple of minutes to participate in our survey. Your feedback is very valuable to us. You can either scan the QR code or enter the URL to participate in this survey. Once again, thank you everyone for being here today. We would like to make a special thanks to all our vendors and speakers from Beyond Trust, Checkpoint, Forescout, Gigamon, and Tufin for making this event happen. We hope to see all of you soon. Stay safe and goodbye.